All right, we're back. Another episode of Bro Research Radio. I'm here again with Ryan LeCure, currently living in Austin, Texas. Used to be a trainer in Connecticut.
I used to have more T-shirts too.
He's only got this one.
I got this one purple one.
He doesn't usually wear a shirt here. Actually, it's kind of frowned upon. Only tank tops.
Just trying to live my truth.
Live your truth. Live your light. Love and light. So what we're going to be talking about today, the last conversation was we kind of went all over the place, pretty in depth, and
got aggressive.
Definitely got aggressive. And this podcast is gonna be more about Ryan. And so last year you competed in November, October, both.
September, October, November.
Okay. You did how many shows?
Just 3 shows.
Okay.
Yep.
And when did you start dieting for that?
April 1st.
So that's
2018.
6 months out.
Yeah, for the first show. Yep.
But when was your ideal peak?
It was supposed to. Well, I mean, we'll talk about mistakes and things, but I was planning to peak for the last show, which is probably not the best way to do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I didn't want to hang on for that long, but the plan was to be ready in November.
And you went from what weight to what weight?
I was hovering around 223, 222, and then ended up at 191, 192. That's how I get on stage.
So you were probably 225, 10% body fat?
Almost. I mean, I touched like 225 like 1 or 2 days in the off season.
Okay.
But yeah, I was probably staying around 223, 222 at 10%-ish, something like that. Measurements aside. It was an easy.
You were lean. You were lean.
I was fairly lean, but I wasn't fighting to be there. It was pretty easy to maintain. I was eating a lot. I was actually having trouble gaining weight at that point. Yeah.
And how long had that off season been up to that point?
4 years. I competed in the fall of 2014, so it had been about 3.5 years
of straight gaining.
Trying to gain.
Mini cuts.
Yeah, I did a lot of dumb things at the beginning of my off season in 2014. Which led to me not really starting a full off season until probably 9 months post show.
So you held on to that for a while?
I attempted to. I really just picked up a bunch of disordered eating behaviors and crappy training for a while until I, got my head out of my ass essentially and started doing things a little bit better. But so it was a long off season, but it ended up being abbreviated in terms of progression and productivity, really, just from how I was eating, how I was training, injuries and things.
So how many years would you say of that 4 year off season, quote unquote, were productive?
I would probably say maybe a year,
okay,
really, before I really got everything together. I think, yeah.
So this is gonna be cool, and then you're planning to compete again in
2022.
So you're gonna have a good 2.5 years to do this again, to ride the gains train. And so we wanted to, there's this idea on the interwebs that looking insane, like when people go to they do these photo shoots, that they are somehow healthy, that this is somehow something that you want to be able to maintain, this insane level of leanness, these washboard abs, striations on your glutes. And so we wanted to show you the data that Ryan collected. I was I was on the back end. I was just consulting on his case for the last, I think, 2.5 years or so. Yep. And so we're going to screen share this, and we're kind of going to talk about his labs. So we have labs going back from, it just shows these from 2017. And so one of the cool things that you guys can see here is, back in June, back in 2017, you're gaining here, right?
Attempting to, yeah. That's when we just had started Mass 2, right? So we started collecting data for that. So that would have been right around there. And attempting to gain at that point. So I was around that 220, 222 marker at that point. I really stayed there for a long time throughout the off season.
And what were back when you're in the off season, what were your carbohydrates at?
500 plus. I basically would set a baseline of about 150 to 180 grams of fat, 500 grams of carbohydrate, and about 200 to 220 grams of protein per day. And that was just like bare minimums. And if I could eat more than that, I would. And I usually did. and that would be in the form of whatever I could get down, essentially. So a lot of difficulty gaining weight at that point, even maintaining weight at that point, just having to cut out a lot of the denser foods. So all my carbohydrate sources were very simple, and they were not very fibrous. It was not what you would consider like quality carbohydrates, if that's even a thing. And really,
so it's a struggle bus to get that amount of calories.
Definitely a hard time. Yeah, definitely a hard time.
And those of you guys who don't know what these values are, fasting glucose doesn't necessarily mean a lot to us. You can do that from Walgreens. You can go spend $25 right now and you get a fairly reliable finger stick test. And so you going into a lab, there's a lot of variables there. His blood glucose is fine. Look, fasting blood glucose is good. For like above 100 is pre-diabetic. Nowhere near that, obviously. And so hemoglobin A1C is an average of blood glucose control over the last life of the red blood cells. So look at glycated hemoglobin. So it's essentially look at the damage that, or like glycation reaction, sugar slapping on protein, over the life of red blood cells. So that could be anywhere from 75 to 120 days. And so you can see that he is very low consistently all the time. So he's eating 500, 600 grams of carbohydrates, and his C-peptide, which is a longer term marker of insulin secretion, is not high. These are low values. Low values.
What would you contribute that to, you think?
Just the amount of movement that you do, because you were training people at this time. You had a lot of clients, so you were probably dissipating a lot of that. The research is pretty solid on moving around eating. It seems to be a good idea. So the fact that I just consumed 100 grams of carbohydrates and now we're sitting doing this podcast is probably the best thing for my long-term health.
Yeah, well, we might get into a physical fight.
Yeah, we might do some
if you get fired up.
Yeah, I'll probably get fired up once we get down to thyroid. And so this is what I see. This is what I see with people who train. It seems like the movement aspect and the muscle is your sink for glucose. If you have a ton of muscle, and you maintain a good body composition, you're guarded against metabolic dysregulation. And so this to me is kind of the coolest point. This point over here from November to February, because November's that was the day after your comp, right? Mm-hmm. That's when that lab work was.
That was like a day and a half after. Yep.
And so there, you're probably 3 or 4% body fat. Like you're pushing essential fat ranges for a guy, and you can see he's going from November to February. He went from what weight to what weight?
November, yeah. I mean, I was 192 the day of the show, so that was on November 5th. So November 7th, I was probably 197 or something, maybe. February 21st, I was weighing in the 230s.
So, guys, that's
low 230.
40 pounds of weight gain in a 2 to 3 month period.
Probably fat.
Yeah,
definitely
mostly
fat.
Like collateral fattening. Like you got to gain it back.
All
like,
fat.
Yeah, you're gonna fat overshoot, and that's what happened. And maybe you did gain. We don't know. Maybe you did gain some lean body mass during that time.
But even with that, still didn't see a large increase in A1C. So
nothing.
Yeah,
it went down.
And I think that the assumption would be just if you have a place to put the sugar, like it's not going to be as much of a problem. Whether you're mobilizing it or you have a place to store it, having a sufficient amount of muscle mass and activity is the key, right?
Yeah, for me, for metabolic health, for sure. Mm-hmm. I think those are the big rocks, and people lose those. They start their the point of life is not to count carbohydrates. The point of life is probably to get to a point where you don't have to worry about cutting anything. Yeah. And we're not going to talk a lot about electrolytes or kidney function. All that's fine. We're going to jump down into here into the cool stuff. And so the colors on this are inside of quote unquote functional ranges. We can argue about that. Don't worry. We're not going to get into the nuances or the debate about that topic. I just use this as a way to show kind of serial. It's a good way to show serial lab markers. And so this is kind of there's a lot of cool aspects of seeing this many labs serially. And this is honestly probably a publishable case study with the amount of labs that we have, the amount of data that you collected over this time. And you can see ALT and AST are transferases. These are going to be, there's a couple things that rise with training in terms of blood work. Bilirubin is going to rise up acutely. LDH is going to rise up. Obviously, creatine kinase is going to rise up. These are markers of muscle damage. And so ALT and AST are markers of damage. They might be, there's a lot of reasons that ALT and AST can be elevated. Alcohol consumption, NAFL, bad shit. But then viral loads, things like that. But training can do it as well. And Ryan tends to have like a pretty high chronic low, like chronic ALT, AST. And doesn't have any symptomatology to this. We'll talk about that, but he's had a lot of the testing for liver. He doesn't have hepatitis. We tested everything for that. We could get a liver biopsy and see if he does have something going on, but then he's got to get knifed on the liver. And I don't think anybody would be, maybe with these values, they might've done it. They probably would have ultrasound you first. And so this is fucking banana land right here. In terms of, you just see this crazy increase. And so this is the day after the show. So June, you're like 205, 210, right?
Yeah. I think I was coming around 205.
Yeah.
Still feeling decent, starting to feel the effects at that point. So 2.5 months, 10 weeks into dieting, starting to feel not so good.
And so I got these labs back, and this is outside my scope of practice, 100%. So I immediately text Ryan. I'm like, hey man, we got to have someone else look at these labs. I immediately forwarded them, with his permission, to 2 other MDs. And they kind of said, hey, this is the direction you need to take this. And then we did what they recommended. And so he got a bunch of hepatitis testing. And so just because these values are insanely high, and I mean, he's my friend. Like, I don't want anything bad to happen to him. He legitimately, he could have gone to the hospital. And so to this day, we don't necessarily know why you saw that acute rise. My hunch is this is my hypothesis, would be that immune system tanked, and then you had some kind of viral load, Epstein-Barr, whatever, it doesn't matter. Some kind of viral loads spike these up. Mm-hmm. And when we do see that in your immune response, it could also be just the stress of training at that time was so high, because you were maintaining your training volume throughout this cut. And so we got to think that he's extremely under-recovered at this point. And just the amount of damage that he's doing to his system is probably pretty high. And we see that with the LDH market as well. We see that pop. Bilirubin didn't do much. And you did wait 24 hours after, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's some movement, some light movement the day of the show. I mean, you're posing, you're pumping up. That's on Saturday. So, but nothing on Sunday aside from, I was chewing a lot, ate a lot of food.
You also got this 315 acute rise in ferritin. So the ferritin rising is acute phase reaction.
Yeah, I mean, I had a good amount of food, red meat.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think this is an acute red meat intake to me. This is inside of this. This is an acute phase reactant. So there's some kind of inflammatory process that is driving this. And if we think about what drives inflammation, it's usually food, bugs, and environmental toxins, or just obesity and having too much fat will create low-level inflammation. So, and this to me is probably some kind of immune system reactivity. So the immune system reacts and it produces inflammation. That's what the immune system does. And so this to me looks like an acute phase reaction. That's going to happen. I think that's one of the big, we see this with female distance runners. We see with anyone who made wrestlers, we see anyone who drives these low levels of body composition. With that, you're going to have a drop in immune function, which we see here in his white blood cells. So we just see, but they didn't drop more than normal, but they did. The cool thing is they did come back. Yep. So they did drop low and then they did come back. His cholesterol seems pretty similar. We wouldn't expect it to change that much. The TSH, the thyroid this is nuts. So you can see his TSH kind of stays normal throughout the entire, it starts to go up here. But TSH is it's thyroid stimulating hormone. It's essentially a pituitary hormone that tells your thyroid to produce more thyroid hormone. Thyroid is the gland that controls your basal metabolic rate. Every cell in the human body has a receptor for thyroid hormone. So it's a very big deal, and we will see decrements in thyroid function when people lose. It's one of the things that happens when people lose weight. If you're inside of healthy body fat percentage ranges, please don't use thyroid as an excuse. If you don't have a pathology with your thyroid, it's probably not your thyroid. People love to find easy ways out. Like he had a total T3 of 48 in May, and you dieted for another
6 months, almost 6 months.
So you probably lost another 15, 20 pounds with.
Oh yeah. I mean, in May I was still over 210.
So you lost another 20 pounds with lab low thyroid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's a point, guys. Like he lost another 20 pounds by putting less calories in his mouth than he was essentially putting less calories in and probably burning more calories. Maybe we'll see, probably keeping that the same. Because you didn't do a ton of cardio, right?
I was doing like a few days of dedicated cardio, and then the rest of the days I had a step count, which just turned into me doing more cardio because that ended up decreasing. That NEAT is going to decrease with decrease in energy intake, so that ended up happening naturally, and I would end up having to make it up at the end of the day. So it wasn't cardio in terms of I'm trying to get an adaptation. It's more just cardio in the sense of just trying to get more movement in. So I was keeping minimums of 12,000 steps a day, and then doing some. But I wasn't. I mean, God, some competitors are doing an hour of cardio every day, multiple times a day sometimes. So not anything incredibly extreme.
And that cardio itself, probably from an interference effect, that's the negative. Is that it's going to probably hurt your training volume.
Especially as you get the heart rate up higher, you're starting to.
It's going to compete for adaptation.
Yeah, totally.
But I don't think that the cardio is going to have any kind of just doing exercise itself. It doesn't look like that is going to produce hormonal dysfunction. It's the reduced energy availability from that exercise. And that's why notoriously where we see the female athlete triad and a lot of these kind of what we're seeing here in these low body fat percentages and those low energy consumption would be bodybuilders at any point, probably down farther into their competition, but also like people who are doing an insane amount of exercise volume, like CrossFitters, female distance athletes, anything that involves an insane amount of insanely high training volume. And you did have some low thyroid symptoms.
Oh yeah.
You were constipated. That was probably the biggest one.
Yep. That was, I mean, it's just generally low energy, brain fog. Like, I don't know if that can be explained with thyroid or not, but I think they're all like pinpointing one particular hormone to me is it doesn't really matter. Like, it's nothing about the specific hormones. Like you just said, it's this whole array of things that really come down to just energy balance.
Adaptation. All these adaptational strategies that your body is having. And this is just one of them. This is. And we'll generally, in my assumption, this is my hypothesis, I think we'll generally see thyroid react first. Because the thyroid hormone has about 90 days of thyroid hormone stored in it. The thyroid gland has 90 days of thyroid hormone. So this is all regulated. Like, this is never, it's not like there's not enough thyroid hormone. Like, no, there's plenty of thyroid hormone. Your body just wants it this way. Because it wants to turn down your basal metabolic rate because it doesn't want you to lose more weight. Yep. And then if we look and see what happens, it's auto correcting.
Yeah,
just so cool.
That's what's wild. If you look at the first measurement from 2017, T3 at 93, 223 pounds, whatever. Then I go to February 2019 at 116 at my heaviest all-time body weight ever.
Yeah.
And thyroid hormones picked up. So, and along with that, I'm sure a lot of other things have picked up too. Just NEAT probably increased. I probably became less efficient muscularly, probably less sympathetic tone to periphery. Just everything going the opposite because in a way, your body doesn't want to gain weight either. Like, it doesn't want to go either direction. It's just like
it just fights it a hell of a lot more the other way.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think it does fight it potentially from not necessarily maybe as much physiologically, but I do think that it does fight super hard psychologically from an appetite's perspective.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what was interesting. Like, this was in February. At this point in time, I'm at my heaviest body weight I've ever been at. I'm eating 1,000 calories on average less than I was at 223 pounds, where I couldn't gain weight. And my appetite is still completely dysregulated. When I'm at 230 pounds, I'm still wanting to eat everything.
Everything you see.
Everything and there was no satiation. It was all just cognitive oversight of, all right, I need to stop eating at every meal. It's just kind of weird. Eventually I just hit like a cap, like a hard cap, where all of a sudden I don't want to eat anymore.
Which is why I think you see a lot of bodybuilders, like they lose control after a show, and then the only thing they have, they just start cutting.
And I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this too. And I know this is a big debate in bodybuilding right now. And what do you do post show? Is like, do you go back up to your previous maintenance? Do you go up to what your maintenance is now? Do you just allow those binges to happen? Because in my mind, I think a lot of times the more that you have to pull back and go forward again and pull back, I'm almost at the place where I'm just like, you know what? Just go eat, man. Like, just do what you got to do, get it out of your system, because if you're going to constantly be thinking about it forever, because we know there's going to be this period of time. Like if we look at the collateral fattening concept, or if we look at some of the later research that was taken from some of those, the Minnesota starvation experiment, patients, what am I looking for the word? Subjects. Yeah. If you look at some of the data they collected later, a lot of them reported not feeling normal 4 to 5 years later, still having appetite dysregulation. A lot of them were not able to get to their previous body fat percentage, what they started at. So they overshot, and then we're just stuck there, essentially trying to pull. So it's almost like there's going to be this period of time where your body's going to put on more fat. Your brain is going to be dysregulated.
I think it might be forever. Like that's the thing. That's the thing for me is why I'm so scared to, not necessarily scared, but like why I myself have no desire to do a bodybuilding competition is because I think you could potentially rewire the brain forever. Yeah. In terms of like the Minnesota starvation trial it's essentially a trial done in around World War II to test what was the potential deleterious effects of being in an internment camp. And so they dieted these people down for 6 months, super low. And by the end, these guys were drawing pictures of food and trading them like carbs. Wild shit. Yeah. And so people are going to become super food oriented, and that didn't dissipate for a long time. Like they even interviewed them way later in their life, and they were still screwed up. Messed up. And that's what every bodybuilder is essentially doing to a certain point. They are doing it in a more educated manner, but the psychological stuff to me is, I think, especially for guys, we're seeing like his labs just come back to normal. Like that's kind of the crazy thing is like your labs came back to normal in 4 months of eating, getting that fat back on your body. All your hormones came back in line. If anything, they got better from where they were originally, probably because here, I even think in this initial one, you're probably under where your body wants to be as far as fat.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
And so to me, the really cool thing is that, yes, the metabolic stuff, all what we can measure, right? What we know is a product of what we can measure. And so what we can measure, it looks like it came back online, but you are still screwed up psychologically from a food standpoint.
Yeah. From a food standpoint, from self-perception standpoint, the way you talk about body dysmorphia, and I'm very comfortable talking about all these things because I know it happens to everybody, and there's a reason for it. It's your body's always going to try to find that middle place, that homeostasis, and I feel like every system will come online to get you back there, and that includes behavior, that includes just your the way you identify yourself, all of these components you wouldn't think have anything to do with it. And so, yeah, I mean, I have to have this constant counting game going on in my head. Even right now, I mean, I've been intuitively eating for, at least a month now or a couple months. And
in a gain phase,
so
which I think is probably pretty healthy at this point.
Yeah. And I feel like I have, in terms of where I'm at right now compared to where I was, like I'm in a pretty good place psychologically with food, but it's still definitely there. And I think it'll always be there. And, I don't know that it ever really goes away with most people. And I think a lot of people don't even have the insight to know that it's happening. They're just, all of a sudden they're different. And I'm like, even just my mood still isn't back to where it used to be. I'm starting to get like my sense of humor back. I'm just a dick all the time. I'm so upset. I mean,
he is very easily upset.
Yeah,
especially when you slap him.
Yeah, which is weird because most people love being slapped in the face randomly on a podcast.
Some people.
Well,
Don't yuck my yum, man.
That's not what I signed up for. But yeah, there's I don't even know what we were talking about because I'm just thinking about us having a webcam where you smack in the face and the people pay for it. So if anyone's interested in that kind of thing,
make a lot of money.
I can take a
no, but like I think that you've been doing this for a long time. You've been bodybuilding and you've been tracking your food, and you've kind of learned the hard way, right? Like I did too. Like I remember in college, like I measured everything, like because I'm super OCD. I think both of us have this natural tendency to like numbers. We both like we like elements of control. We like having control it's not real, but we like the illusion that we control our environment. And so one of the things that I think that people need to take away from this situation and they need to respect is this is all relative. All right. Like, yes, I think that it's going to be extra bad when you lose those essential levels of fat. For guys, it's probably you need about 3 to 5% of body fat. For females, 10, 12, maybe more though. I think that females, it's way more variable because like whenever you lose your period, that's probably the essential. And
that's your essential fat.
And most people don't even really know when they lose their period. It's probably way before that. And so not to go down that rabbit hole, but whenever you can't have another human, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Because that is the point of you being on this planet. Mm-hmm. And so this is relative. And so that means that if you have clients that are, they're 27, they're a guy, they're 27, they're 28, they're 30% body fat, getting them down to 12% body fat may be straight crazy for them. Getting them down to 18, like I've seen labs that look nuts when people have gone from 35% to 18% and they're like, I got to get to 12. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know if that's a good idea because you're going to be completely food oriented. You're going to be screwed up the rest of your life in the name of that body fat percentage. And not to say that it's not possible, not to say that you can't do it. That's not my job, is to change people's goals. But I think that we want to just have respect for the toll that this can take, for the price. We got to be, are you willing to pay the price to have that result?
It's funny because, I don't see anyone having arguments about why they can't be taller.
Yeah.
Pat Davidson doesn't complain about the fact that he's wider than he is tall. That's just who he is, and he's always going to be that way. That's why he's a human chode. But, you can't change those things. Some things, and that I think that people, because we can manipulate our body fat and our body composition to a degree, people think that there is no level to that. There's no cap for a particular person. That they see this guy that's lean all the time, has abs all year round. Well, why the hell can I do that?
Because you can't.
Because you can't, man. You can try.
It's going to take a ton of work.
I suppose I could just traction myself for days and months at a time, and I'd probably get taller. I could figure it out.
I don't even know if that would work.
Yeah, but there's certain things that are just not in the realm of possibility without completely screwing yourself up.
Yeah, and genetics is from what we know, genetics is fairly height is genetically related. It's polygenetic, meaning that it has a ton of genes that are regulated in different ways. Same with obesity. And so I think that everyone is going to have different, I don't want to say set points because that word has a lot of baggage, but I think they have pretty wide zones. And my hunch is that a lot of that has to do with genes, but a lot of it also probably has to do with fetal microenvironment and early life. And what your body, especially in females, what your body feels like is safe. So if your mother was a dieter and she dieted when you were in utero, that's probably going to turn on some stuff that is going to have you fight this a little bit at a little bit higher body
temperature. And in what way? Like what happens when a mother is restricting energy intake? What happens in general when you restrict energy intake?
I mean, you're gonna have all this male. You're gonna have all these adaptations, and so then now that baby thinks, that little human thinks that it's coming into a world where nutrients are not available.
And you tell yourself the same thing when you go into a diet, right? That food is scarce.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like your internal environment doesn't necessarily know that there is a McDonald's down the street. Like it just knows what you're giving it, right? So that's a huge concept in that.
It doesn't know. It sees that as a threat. Like you're everything. We've only had McDonald's for 100 years, maybe less. And so your body's, your mind, your body, it sees dieting as it is a threat to the system.
I think that you need to understand that if you want to go to those places, you got to know like what is going to happen. and you're going to be setting yourself up really just to gain weight. That's what I think a weight loss phase is. In my mind now, weight loss phases are preparing you for weight gain. Because that's the one thing we can pretty much guarantee is going to happen. Like you're going to gain weight eventually.
And if you want to maintain weight loss forever, the weight loss registry is pretty clear about the habits that you have to maintain. You may have to maintain a high level of self-monitoring, so you can't ever quit. Like you can't ever wave the white flag. Yeah. Like life is never going to be normal. Just go back. Right? It's not like, so you got to be active. You got to maintain a high nutrient dense diet. And so these things what we see is in the diet community, and this is like why diets make you fat. Like these types of books that come out is because like this system is incredibly powerful.
And there may be, like, just so it's not all like doom and gloom, like there probably is a range that we can win. Like I think that you can get, there's strategies, and maybe we'll talk about them, of how to get there safely. I think
huge metabolic benefits too.
Yeah.
Like even losing 5% of your weight, you're going to have huge metabolic benefits.
So is there a place where we can go if we think of this concept as like, maybe there's a genetic component to how lean you can be, but there's a range, like, so you can maybe be okay, especially we talk about females, maybe they're okay from 17 to 20% body fat.
My hunch would be that genetic component is how hard you fight it. That would be my hunch, is like, because it's all relative, right? So your body, your brain is going to get used to however much fat you had on board via leptin, via all the signaling pathways. And so my hypothesis would be that your body is going to fight it based on how high you got.
And that to me is a representation that you've hit that threshold. When you have when all of a sudden you're dreaming about food, or like you finish your meal and you're thinking about your next meal, that's a sign to me that, like, all right, our performance is starting to decline. Like you're at that place where you got to be careful now. Is you go any lower than that, like it's gonna become an issue. That's when you're going to start to see, or you may already be seeing some of these things changing in terms of what we've been talking about with the labs. So
same thing happens to me. When I go under 180, I just start thinking about every time I'm going to eat during the day.
Yeah. And so that's probably, so you could probably teeter on that line, and you may still be able to make progress in the gym. You may still be able to live okay and not have.
I don't know that, like, if we look at these right here, like you're not adapted probably at all. From May to November, like metabolic, like if we look at these labs, like I don't think that you're going to be putting on muscle. In fact, you're hypogonadal by definition in June.
So let's talk about that, because like there is some debate about whether testosterone even matters, right? Because we know if you get on a bunch of endogenous testosterone, like you're probably going to put on some muscle like that. We're not talking about super physiological ranges. So does it even matter? Is there a difference? Let's talk about the higher end first, maybe. Is there a difference between being, if we're looking at a normal range of what, 300 to 1,000 or 300 to 1,100, whatever the range is there any benefit to being at 1,100 compared to 700 in terms of the amount of muscle mass you can gain?
I don't think inside of physiologic ranges, I think of testosterone as a canary, in that you can't separate them. There's so many things that can knock down testosterone that would also knock down your ability to put on muscle, that you really can't ever interdigitate those. You can't ever pull them apart. And so to me, testosterone is a canary. there is some really screwed up research in this where they took, college age males, and this isn't that long ago, but they took college age males and they gave them a GnRH agonist, which sounds weird for people. GnRH is the signal at the level of the hypothalamus, which turns on the pituitary. Pituitary secretes luteinizing hormone that hits your testicles. The testicles produce testosterone, and so they give them our GnRH agonist because all these things are pulsatile. So your testosterone changes throughout the day. So that's one of the things that people need to understand is that, like, if you get your testosterone can vary like 30 to 50% even throughout the day. Like I can show charts of that. It's going to be generally highest in the morning and then lowest in the evening. So if you got your testosterone draw at a different time, like it can look different. That's why you want to keep these as similar as possible. There's even people that argue like same day of the month. Like there's that. I don't think you need to have that level of control, but I would say definitely the same type of day, same type of environment. And so these hormones are by themselves variable. They're not static. And so when we think about area under the curve, this is kind of like when you think about how much hormone is available for the entire day, and then the area under that. So essentially, if you start your day at 900 and then you go up, and you have the area under the curve. And that's why we found that these acute hormonal spikes with training don't matter. Yep. Because in terms of area under the curve, it doesn't matter. And James Krieger has a really good, I would call it an article, going into the evidence that we do have of different testosterone ranges related to muscle mass growth. And to me, there's kind of two avenues to look at this. There's females can put on relatively just as much muscle mass as men. If anything, they're stronger in their lower body comparatively than us. They can't take upper body, but that has to do with a lot of things. And so, but muscle mass wise, they can put on just as much as us relatively. And they have a fraction of they have a 20th, a 30th of the testosterone as us. Yes, they have some other hormones that help them out. Estrogen itself is highly protective for muscle. Think about for women going postmenopausal, you're going to now have like, I think it's 1/20th of the level of estrogen that you had before. All your hormones are going to go down. If you give 1/4 of the level of testosterone, most of your testosterone is going to come from androstenedione, from the adrenal glands, and so you're going to have these hormones drop. And what do you see postmenopausally? Bone, muscle, bam, get knocked. So this isn't just a male issue, but I think that when we're thinking about inside of physiologic ranges, this to me, I think that someone who's new could, I'm not even a could. If a newbie had these values and they came, I would obviously think that there's something wrong, right? It's out of my scope. It needs to be taken care of by a medical provider. But there's something wrong here, but that something wrong does not mean that they can't gain muscle.
So basically is the answer testosterone therapy at that point?
No. Look what happened to you.
Yeah.
So I think that even in the Journal of Endocrinology, you say all lifestyle strategies need to be tried first before you do this. And I think that's you need to try to do, like, could your low testosterone be because of a TBI? Could it be because you have a varicocele? Yes. These are all things that can be tested. You can get a pituitary MRI. You can do your due diligence. And it still might come back like, hey, we don't necessarily know why your testosterone is low. You could not be eating enough fat. You could be too skinny. It could just be a metabolic adaptation. You could be an alcoholic. You could have high ferritin. There's a ton of different reasons that you could have low testosterone. You probably want to take care of those before you start the jack. And so to me, the inside of physiologic ranges is not going to predicate your ability to put on muscle unless it is being caused by not sleeping, over OTS, being stressed out of your mind, like all of these things that we know are going to affect different types of body composition. And so this, to me, why is your testosterone low? Because you 3% body.
Stop eating.
Right? You're starving.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, why would that be online? Why would you be trying to create more humans if you can't even provide for yourself? Just from the simplest explanation possible. If you look at my testosterone, it's like, in the previous measurements, they're not super high. So it's more like a measure that you would use to see, hey, well, if you see a drop down to 1/3 of what it normally is, like, okay, what's going on here? It's not so much that it's the testosterone that's the issue. It's that there's something else that must be driving that. So I think that's where people get like all excited about testosterone levels. It's probably not all that important for muscle mass unless you're seeing a huge decline like that. And even in that case, it's not about the testosterone. It's about what's going on that created that change.
So this is the Kvorning study in 2006, and so they dropped these dudes down. Like we're talking, their testosterone was at like 30. Mm-hmm. Like it was super low. So they started at 650, bam, knocked them down. This is a GnRH agonist, and they look at like lean body mass. They still gained 1.5 kilos of muscle. Even at that, these are untrained people. They still gain muscle, even with, not even clinically low testosterone. They had they had 10% of what you had. Yeah. So yeah, if your testosterone is low and you're a noob, you can. And I'm not saying this to be negative. I'm just saying don't use it as an excuse. Maybe motivationally, I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. I think if your testosterone is low, you're like behaviorally, you're going to have a lot of stuff that comes with that. And so physiologically, I think that you can put on muscle depending on how advanced you are. But then again, I think everything starts to matter. This seems to be around 400 to 500 seems to be where your testosterone is. Yep. You don't have any low T symptoms. It just seems to be where you are. You have done a ton of dieting in your life, but you don't have any low testosterone symptoms there. And there's a lot of stuff that we don't know about this. You're fucking giant, dude. Like you have an FMI of like 27.5, 28. Like he's lifetime natty, but somehow has all the side effects. And so he's put on a ton of muscle, and you don't see his testosterone at 1100. Like he's not, it just is what it is. So we don't know testosterone receptor sensitivity. We don't know how long this is sticking around. We don't know anything. We don't know what's happening at the cellular level. We don't know androgen receptor response. There's so many things that we don't know. So remember, what we know is a product of what we can measure. And what we can measure here is your testosterone took a fucking dive, and that's probably representative that you weren't getting any type of adaptation here.
Yeah.
But I think I think this is interesting because this is the highest your percent body fat has probably ever been.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's I mean, I have one measurement higher than that. And there's an interesting
which is probably
there.
Honestly like inside the level of testosterone itself. You got to remember these are nanograms per deciliter. So these are tiny, like we're talking paper clips in a pool. Like that's the concentrations we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. So this is going to have some error bars on it. But yeah, I mean, you did have a ton of psychological stuff going on.
Yeah. Here. I think that if you don't want to get blood work done, I don't think you necessarily need to. I mean, your testosterone's low.
You can take the Adam questionnaire,
I mean, like you could just wake up in the morning and see if you have an erection. Like, and if you don't have an erection for 90 days straight, like you probably are having some issues there. All right.
Yeah, we lost Bob. It's fine, dude.
So always keep wrong. So it's pretty like you'll know other things are going on when nervous. I don't know. Don't we run out of internet? If you run out of power,
no, we're not using the internet.
What are we using? Oh, we just okay. Well, things are a little different.
Backup power.
Things are a little different in Texas.
We're set up, dude.
I don't know anything about this guy. I'm so nervous. I was about to get on a roll about boners that you cut me off.
Yeah.
Did Steph turn off the power because I said boner?
You were good about.
Listen.
So you had a lot of psychological stuff.
A lot of psychological, a lot of physiological things going on. So in terms of like the psychological stuff, like I was completely trying to seclude myself every month, which is pretty normal for me. Honestly.
Sickness behavior, like look at what dogs do, and
I mean literally like food guarding. Like if you come up to me while I'm eating, like I might stab you with my fork. Like it's
that November retreat, dude. It was like legitimately 25 of your best friends, and you didn't talk to anyone.
Yeah, that was right after finishing the diet. Yeah, so I was still sub 200 pounds and getting to eat again. The only thing that I wanted to do, like
you didn't lift with us.
No, I didn't want to lift with you guys. Well, I was also like on my own training program, but I wouldn't have either. Like it was just everything that I did, like was just people were taking energy away from me. Essentially, is how I was looking at everything. And it was like I'm completely aware of what's going on. Like I know that all this stuff is happening, but I can't fight it. It's just like this evolution taking over. Like there's a reason why I'm acting this way. So it was pretty wild just to watch that whole process taking place and knowing as much about it as I do now. But previously I didn't know very much. I just knew that I just started hiding in a corner every time that I ate. And
so now you're the watcher of your behavior.
Yeah. And still not able to talk myself out of it. I'm just, I definitely need to go hide in the closet every time I eat because someone might ask me what I'm eating and that's going to really irritate me. And, or just someone might bother me and just take me out of my place with everything, it's just with training and I'm honestly, I'm still that way. I'm still recovering from that. I mean, it's almost July. I mean, it's been almost 8 months and I'm still like just becoming okay with like coming up to train with you guys. Because in a lot of ways, I'm still wanting to train by myself. So these behaviors stick around, and I think like the knee-jerk reaction when people start gaining weight again is to go right back into it, and I think that's like the absolute worst thing you could do because you
give yourself some space.
Yeah, that you never recover. So you just have to allow the weirdness to take place, like know that it's going to happen, and just let yourself recover from it, and that can take a variable amount of time.
Don't live here. Like, there's a lot of people that want to, like, maybe not live at where the level of leanness that you are at, but there's a lot of people that want to live at, like, 7.
And the crazy thing is like, if you look at my photos, and I'm not just being modest, like, I'm not anywhere near the level of conditioning that a lot of the best bodybuilders are at. I mean, there's a whole different level of conditioning that I was nowhere near touching. So I don't know what the hell those guys felt like, or they're able to. It's something. Yeah, I think I'll get there eventually. I'm going to take myself to that place and
we'll collect the data.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. So maybe it gets even lower, or maybe I'm not even really able to get there because of all of the fucked up stuff I did to myself when I was a kid. I mean, I've been dieting since I was 10 years old. I wrestled, cutting weight, doing low carb, fasting, all sorts of shit since I was a kid. Really.
You've been dieting way longer on this earth than you haven't been.
Yeah,
way longer.
Yeah, I started when I was 10 years old. Yeah. Which is pretty wild. So yeah, I think these are.
But you've come. This is kind of a testament to you as an individual too. But you've come full circle. I think a lot of people like aren't the watcher of it. From a cognitive behavioral therapy, you're able to watch yourself catastrophize. You're able to watch yourself kind of have these thoughts, and you can at least even you maybe can't control them when you're down there, but now you can. You can see them. You can laugh at them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And we can both make fun of them together.
Usually you just make fun of them. I just get upset.
He still gets upset.
I get upset.
He doesn't get that. He never gets upset. He just cries to Kaylin. So this is just what you're seeing here. This is kind of the cool marker that seems to be getting picked up in the research a little bit more is this hemoglobin, because this is your testosterone dropped. So testosterone is going to regulate EPO, which is erythropoietin. That's going to regulate red blood cells synthesis at the level of bone marrow. And so you can see that this RBC value is low, and then his hemoglobin is low. So he's not anemic. He's not there yet. He's close, I guess. But just acutely, you are driving down red blood cell secretion. So this is kind of one of the big markers that they want, because this is a cheap marker. So hemoglobin, this is CBC, costs $4.50. So if you can just track this over the training career, this could be a marker of overtraining.
Would that maybe explain some of the work capacity losses potentially?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because that's definitely something that you hear subjectively from anyone who died. I mean, your performance just goes down.
Can't carry oxygen. That's a big deal.
I mean, literally, it would be like a 5-minute recovery between a set of bicep curls. Whereas, I mean, you've seen me do 20/40s and 30/30s,
mm-hmm.
where it's highly metabolic, like very high heart rate sustained throughout. Like, I mean, that stuff was not even an option at some point. So, yeah, that's kind of cool, because I don't think we've talked about that yet. That makes sense to me, because I was kind of looking for reasons. Like, I don't see why this work capacity thing is happening, aside from just your body just trying to shut things down, or your brain trying to shut you down from moving unnecessarily. But there's no change. Like you can't explain it with glycogen. That wouldn't.
Well, I think
maybe to a degree,
glycogen is going to have a deal, because it's not like you are chronically under consuming food.
Yeah.
So you probably are
dropping glycogen a little bit.
Dropping glycogen. So I would make the argument of carb cycling there, but more around your hardest training session?
Which I did, you know, and I would even notice, like, even after a refeed week of, you know, 5 days in a row of 500 carbohydrate, still work capacity just kind of. So I think there's definitely, and I looked at some research that says, like, there was even a 10% decrease in muscle glycogen, you're going to see a decrease in performance. But this is like so significant that it was like, I feel like there had to be something more. And it just, because I should be getting more efficient at the same time. We talk about oxygen transfer, increased mitochondria, things should be getting better.
You might have got some good, like, that's one of the cool things about doing this is you may have gotten some cool mitochondrial benefits of essentially training low for a 6-month period.
Yeah. And when that food comes back in, like, you know, so I think as my body composition gets back to where it was before, if it does, then I might start to see the benefits of that. But definitely initially, as I passed the first month of training, who knows if it's just psychological, but you just feel like you can do anything. It's like, dude, I'm actually eating again. Like I can train all day. So yeah, that might be a part of that as well.
What happened to your drive to change? Did your from a POM score perspective, did your motivation to train?
It probably increases because I'm a psycho.
During when you, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, because it's everything is so dialed in. I mean, I'm just so focused.
You're such a robot.
Yeah, just such a robot, and I really just allow myself to go there because I try not to be that way all the time because it's just really a strain for everyone else around me.
Yeah, it destroys relationships.
I've been there before, and I just don't think it's necessary in the off season to be like that all of the time. But I just give myself permission to allow that to happen towards the end of training. So everything is just about training. So I feel like, yeah, if I allowed motivation to decrease, it certainly would have. But it was just not something that you don't have the option because if you let that happen, then you're just done. So
yeah, you're just getting up on the couch.
Yeah, if you give into that's where like even having like this step counter was really beneficial because if I wasn't doing that, I would be getting 5,000 steps a day while training. I mean, literally, like I would write training programs and be thinking about how to not walk up the stairs too many times throughout the training session.
You're thinking about how you can be most efficient with your clients.
Yeah, just how do I I don't want to have dumbbells and barbells in the same thing because that means I have to set up 2 different pieces of equipment. You know, that kind of shit. So yeah, if you're not cognitive about it, at some point, like everything is going to try to just bring you back to what your body likes at every level.
So if you had to if you had to kind of guide, like, number one, like, I think people need to realize that you're not advocating for this sport.
Not at all. Not at all. And I love this sport more than this is my life. This sport is my life. 100%. I've dedicated basically every decision that I've made up until this point since I was 10 years old has really been about progression in the sport, my job, where I live, my friends, everything. And I still would not encourage anyone to do it unless they wanted to. If we're going to talk about doing a bodybuilding show, we're going to have a long conversation about why you want to do it. And if the reason you want to do it is because you want to get trophies or you want to have an Instagram following or you want to have abs, like that's not like I'm not going to be your coach. If you want to do it because you're interested in,
you can do all that stuff by never going to essential body fat level.
Yeah, that's like first of all, you can get that like otherwise, but if you're like if you need to have that from just to feel good about something, I would just encourage you to go find another thing that you're good at or semi good at and get better at it. And
well, eventually they're going to get crushed too because you're talking about this and you're talking about external validity and like seeking happiness outside. So I think a lot of people like you didn't think that when you got on stage and you won that trophy, you would be happy.
No,
like
I knew the work was done yet.
You love the process. Like,
yeah.
That's what makes both of us happy is just like training is it's our anchor. It's our keystone habit or whatever the hell you want to call that thing that keeps all the wheels on the bus for us. And so if you want to be a bodybuilder, don't do it for some unfound glory that you're not going to get paid for. Do it because you love it. Do it because you love training and that's where it takes you. And know the price of it.
Yeah, that's something I try to be very upfront with people about if they aren't interested in all. I mean, I probably talk more people out of it than I talk into it. And like, keep in mind, like, this is also something like it's one of the best decisions I've ever made was to compete in bodybuilding. Like at the same time, like even given all of these decrements that may happen because of it, I'm very happy with my decision to get into it, and I'll continue to do it because I need something to push forward for. And it's about just, I don't know of any other, I haven't personally found any other challenge in my life that's been as satisfying to me, that's been as painful, that's caused me to have to learn as many things as I have, and to just go outside of my normal self. And that's just the way that I've chosen to do that. So that for someone might be a PhD, that's, I can't read, so that's not an option. For someone else, that might be running long distance. That could be doing handstands. Like I don't really care what that is, but if you're going to make bodybuilding that thing, you better understand what you're getting yourself into. And I'm not going to try to dissuade you from it, but just understand what that means.
Everything has consequences. I mean, when I had the opportunity to speak to the yoga classes that my wife runs to her, essentially they're here for a month, longer than a month, and I get to talk to them about, because they love to make fun of people in the weight room. They love to make fun of like people that aren't flexible, that people that, they can't even get into this pose, right? They love to make fun of that, and I always talk to them. I'm like, okay, well, who are the people who are really good at yoga? Do they have problems? Like, do they have? Yeah, their backdoor clients are in a shit ton of pain, right? So if you take anything out to its extremes, you're going to have consequences. You take bodybuilding out to extreme, yes, you're going to have a limited range of motion. Like, you have too much fucking muscle. So there's always going to be a consequence. And I think a lot of people get into this without necessarily knowing the consequences of getting to that level. But both of us, I'm not really friends with anybody who hasn't found a level of mastery in something. Like, because I think when you chase mastery, when you chase the process, and you're not like just this insane novelty seeker, we have a common ground.
Yeah. It's all the same thing.
It's all like it is, because you are addicted to the process, and you are probably just a student of your craft. So, anything else you want to talk about related to this last season? And how you got second place to a guy who wasn't even fucking big. Like, dude,
I mean, those are all like, it's the sport.
That was crazy though. Like, this dude, they took pictures. He won. Let's not belittle him. He was big, but he was nowhere near as big as you. Like, clear. Like, I'm Ryan's friend. Obviously, I'm gonna look, which is one of the problems with bodybuilding. Like, super subjective sport. Like, that's one of the reasons. Like, this is gonna piss me off. Like, super subjective. Like, you gotta think everything's gonna matter, right? Because you're literally going on stage in a G-string naked, and then you're asking these other people to validate you or to just literally rip you apart.
Yeah, if you have body image issues, you don't start with that.
Or you do,
yeah.
or you at least you get in a mirror and you kind of deal with them. And so that's pretty crazy to essentially put 3-4 years of your life on the line for someone else's opinion of you, in a very like bureaucratic situation. And so if you are dead set on results, bodybuilding is probably not your game, because you're going to have to deal with a lot of bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of other things you do. I compete in powerlifting in the off season, and that's pretty objective. I mean, there's some subjectivity with like squat depth, and there's kind of, sometimes you have some calls, but it's never, nothing I've ever done has been about trophies. I've never been good at anything. Like, I've never just been like excelled at one thing just right off the bat. So I don't know what that's like to just be, get accolades for something. So it's never mattered. The only thing that I've gotten accolades for is just working hard. And so that I can do, and that I can do in any different realm. So yeah, if you're putting all the stock on that trophy, because I know people like that like, even people that have won shows that were like, shit, like, I didn't think I really looked that good, but I'm super pumped I got this trophy. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you weren't good. Like, everybody else is just bad, or like the judges just liked whatever you had for whatever reason. But like, did you actually do all the things that you needed to do? Like, are you satisfied with your process? Are you satisfied with what you were able to achieve? And is it dependent on, and that's our culture right now, really. I mean, people like trophies, people like to be special for whatever reason, but I don't know. That's just not what I'm about. I'm not really interested in any of that stuff. So I mean, it's kind of like the running joke in my family, like with bodybuilding shows, it's like, I'm going to lose, like no matter what. Like, it doesn't matter what everybody else looks like I'm not going to win. And I don't really care. Like, cause I've always been more motivated by sucking at things that I have, like being told that I'm good at them anyway. So I would rather have that if I'm going to use that as motivation. But I'm at the point where it's just like, a bodybuilding show is just a tangible moment where I can just say, hey, like, how did I do these last
part
few
of the process?
That's the only way that I can really assess, honestly. Like, because we talked about measuring muscle mass and body fat percentage, all these things you can't really measure this to much accuracy. So the only thing I have is to get on stage and compare pictures 4 years from now. And if I,
which is arguably maybe not even, like, we should really think about, like, maybe getting MRI measurements, like cross-sectional MRI measurements, which could be pretty costly. I might be able to get them maybe a little bit cheaper, but that's really our gold standard, is you lying there on the inside of magnetic donut and getting, how big, what is the muscularity of your legs. But then you'd have to take like 3 or 4 days off.
The thing is, like, it's funny because, it's really just been the last couple of years that you and I have known each other. And I haven't really had a whole lot of people to talk to about this stuff. It's always just been something I pursued on my own. I haven't really had a coach, like, for like a brief stint I did, but I've always done this stuff by myself. So it's really just been all process for me for a long time, probably to the detriment of progress, really, where I've just kind of got so wrapped up in training and enjoying training and just kicking the shit out of myself that I forgot that I'm actually supposed to be progressing in something. And now it's kind of come back the other way, where it's like I'm putting a lot of stock in, am I making progress? And we talk a lot about how do we measure progress and are we maximizing everything? And I'm finding myself getting very wrapped up in that again. And I have to be careful with that, because at some point, like, the gains are going to be so small.
You may not be able to.
I might not even be able to without drugs. I might not be able to do anything. So I can't get too hung up on that stuff. Like, I as a pseudoscientist or someone who watches behind the scenes, like, I would love to see a more accurate measure of hypertrophy, but I don't personally need that, because I'm just going to continue to do the things that we have evidence of makes sense.
You're going to do everything you can.
I'm going to do everything I can do.
All your variables that you can.
Yeah, and it's not going to change very much. Like, I'm not going to be dissatisfied if I put on half a pound of muscle compared to a quarter pound of muscle. Like, I'm still making progress. I'm still able to do this shit. Like, it's something that I can't live without. Like, so there's no option. Like, that's the most important thing to me, is that I have longevity in this. I'm able to continue to do it. Obviously, I want to maximize things, but I don't have so much stock in the end result. It's not about the outcome. It's about that process. As corny as that sounds, like, I will say it all day, because that really is the only thing that's always driven me. And I think if you can push someone to enjoy that process, like, they'll do it forever, and there's never disappointment. It's just like, oh shit, that didn't work. Well, let's go this second option here, and I think that saved you a lot of trouble.
And I think the only reason that both of us that we are driven to collect data and pay for this data and give a lot out of our lives to collect these data and try to answer these questions is because we do want to do it the quote unquote right way. And we might be completely wrong, but at least I want to be as close to the truth as we can. And then I want to give ourselves, like, yeah, if you can't gain muscle, cool, awesome. I don't really care about that either. Like, if I can't get any bigger, it doesn't bother me. I'm still going to go in that room and I'm going to train hopefully for the rest of my life, just to stave off not bigger, but like getting smaller, which is that's terrifying. That's terrifying. Which is probably that's probably an issue that we should both have to deal with in our life. Maybe probably not now. We'll just throw that out. We'll talk about that in like 30 to 80 years.
But I think if you're someone who's dedicating your life to this stuff, I think it's kind of your responsibility. And I think we both feel like it's our responsibility to pass that on to the next generation of idiots that want to just lift things forever. Like, let's get some research. Like, we're the people that are doing this shit. Mm-hmm. So, like, even if it's just case studies, even if it's just collecting your own data, like, we compile enough of this stuff, then we might be able to get some answers. And why would we not want to do things the most efficient way? I want to see people get to fucking 250 pounds at 10% body fat naturally. Like, I want to see, can we figure that out? Is there a formula that we can figure out? Hell, I want to be the first person to do it. I guess that was Panda, whatever that guy's name is.
Simeon Panda.
Yeah, he already did it. All right,
but I'll be the second. He's 220.
He's 220?
Yeah, he's not maybe 230.
So I'm bigger than him.
Yeah, but he's 6'1".
Yeah, but nobody wants to.
You're like 5'8".
With a winter jacket, I look just as good as him. So, yeah.
No, but I was thinking about this the other day, is that I started really training probably, like, I don't know, doing stupid shit, I guess. Maybe you wouldn't call it training. But, like, I was in a weight room maxing out my bench press, my squat, when I was 13 years old. And so I've been doing this for 20 years. And it probably took me a good 12 to 13 years to get close to my genetic potential. And then now I've just been like Fitzjimming around for the last six or 7 years. And so Jonder's such a cool case study, because I legitimately, it's depressing to me, but I legitimately think, and Jonder's, he works here at Flow, and he just has a completely open mind. He doesn't have to think about anything. All his food is prepared. He just comes in and trains with us. And so it's so cool, because I think we may be able to get him there in 2 to 3 years.
Where you're at.
Yeah, I think we might, like, hit in terms of his genetic potential, definitely his lower body. I think we'll probably be able to get him there to the law of land of depreciating returns in 3-ish years. Mm-hmm. Upper body might take a little bit longer. But some people might think, like, I would be mad about that. Or I would be bitter. Like, no, I mean, that's so cool to me. That's so cool that we can do this in a more efficient manner, because that's what the majority of your clients want. They do. They you want to get them addicted to the process, and you want to chase results. And likely it's not that hard in the beginning. It doesn't have to be that hard. And if we maximize all these variables and we can get people addicted to showing up, make it easy, make it satisfying, like do all these things that we know drive behavior change, then we can get people there a lot quicker with a lot less fuckery.
Yeah. That's the goal. Yeah. I think if I was going to say any one more thing to wrap this up is, I want, and we already said it, but I just want to make it very clear that you don't have to be a bodybuilder for this shit to happen. So again, if you're starting at 30% body fat and you lose 10% body fat, like, this stuff could happen to you as well. Like, you're going to see changes. So maybe we'll have, at some point, we'll talk about, like, how do we lose that body fat efficiently? How do we do it to mitigate some of these adaptations? But just keep in mind that, like, if you're a 30-year-old male and you lost a shitload of weight and now you don't get erections and you don't have any kind of sex drive, and, like, that's a big deal. Like, so, and it could be as simple as just maybe you need to eat a little bit more again. Maybe you might not even need to gain necessarily all that weight back, but maybe you're just pushing that a little bit too hard right now. So I would just, like, I want to make that clear to everybody that it doesn't have to be single-digit body fats for you to see these adaptations take place.
Well, I would even second that, and that putting on muscle to me is way, way more important than getting lean. Mm-hmm. Like, if you don't have a lot of muscle, you are going to have to get insanely lean to look muscular. Yeah. If you have a ton of muscle, you could look pretty good at like 15 to 16% body fat. It's pretty crazy. Yep. Like, you could look jacked. You'll definitely look way better in clothes. Like, if you have clothes on, I'm telling you, you're going to look better at 15% with clothes on than you will at 11.
Especially if you train your neck. You got to do the neck training program. But absolutely, yeah.
So I think the focus we need to stop fucking worrying about fat, and we need to start worrying about muscle, because muscle is really the savior. And if you put on muscle, then then maybe you don't even need to lose that much body fat.
Yeah, that's a huge point. Yeah, that's just always, I think, just thinking ahead, man. Like, just like when you make decisions, think about what those consequences are. And if there's any opportunity that you can build yourself up in the future, why wouldn't you try to do that? Why would you try to make just things easier for yourself in the future and set yourself up to be more resilient?
Poor yeah. All right, y'all. Maybe we'll be back. We'll probably do a couple more of these.
Yeah, I might change my shirt if we do it today, but
we're gonna. I hope that you guys enjoyed us talking back and forth. in the basement. And
if you don't, let me know. I'll just go in my bed over here, and he'll just do a podcast by himself again.
Yeah, I can interview you. You can just sit in the back, and I'll interview other people.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you if you're still around here listening to this. And if you want to help us, like we do this for love of the game. Both of us, neither of us are insanely wealthy. We luckily have, significant others who support us.
Trophies.
So we're just trying to work on gender equality. And part of that process is that we're not asking you to come because we need you to come. And in fact, we don't really need you to come. The Hypertrophy Camp is going to be in December 13th to the 20th. And we're just going to be living these principles. We're going to be talking about these principles. It's a time for you to be weird. We're all just going to be training together. It doesn't matter if you're an advanced or you're intermediate or you're even a novice. We're going to figure out what the best strategy is for you, and we're going to put you in that group. We're going to work on your movement patterns. We're going to give you the tools that we found have worked through both research and training people for a long period of time. And so if you want to come to that, just shoot me an email or shoot Ryan a direct message on Instagram. He checks it like once a month.
Yeah, I get to it. I'll get to it by December.
Yeah, you'll get it. It'll be, if you guys have a conversation month to month, it might work itself out. So appreciate you. And if you, this stuff, the research that we're talking about, everything that we're talking about, it's not free. Like everything has a price, right? So if you're not willing to pay that price, maybe stop listening to all these podcasts that are talking about research because you're not helping.